This is the good life. Whoa, oh, oh, oh. Whoa, oh, 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 oh. Whoa, oh, oh, oh. Whoa, oh, 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 oh. 'Cause we struck gold in the shining light, and it's all gonna be alright. This is the good life. Oh, oh, oh. This is the good life. Oh, oh, oh. Out in the sunshine, nothing but good times. This is the good life. This is the good life. Whoa, oh, oh, oh. Whoa, oh, 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 oh. Whoa, oh, oh, oh. Whoa, oh, 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 oh. Whoa, oh, oh, oh. Whoa, oh, 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 oh. Whoa, oh, oh, oh. Whoa, oh, 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 oh. Let's ride, let's go. I'm gonna shake it till you can't no more. So high, so low. I'll take you anywhere you wanna go. I'm out of my mind, out of control. You got me spinning, now I gotta know. I'm on top of the
For record-keeping purposes, if you wish to make a statement regarding any item on the agenda, please complete the form located at the entrance or at the rear of the council chambers and deposit it with the Planning and Housing Commission Secretary. Good evening and welcome to tonight's Planning and Housing Commission meeting. Commissioner Woody will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Communications from the public. Persons wishing to address the Planning and Housing Commission are requested to state their name for the record. This portion of the agenda is intended for public comment. State law prohibits the Planning and Housing Commission from discussing or taking action on items not listed on the agenda. The Planning and Housing Commission will appreciate your cooperation in keeping your comments brief. Please observe a 3-minute limit to communications. Ms. Capilla, did we receive any speaker cards or written comments from the public for any items not on tonight's agenda?
No, Chair Sequelan, we did not.
Item 1 is meeting minutes. It's approval of the minutes for the Planning and Housing Commission meeting of February 6, 2023. Ms. Capilla, did we receive any speaker cards or written comments from the public regarding the February 6th minutes?
No, Chair, we did not.
And as such, do we have a motion for the minutes?
I'll go ahead and move.
I second.
And we have a second by Commissioner Meza. Please vote. And the minutes do pass. Items on to public hearings. The first item for public hearing is GPA 2022-0004. It's a request to change the general plan use designation of a .86 acre parcel located on the east side of Promenade Avenue and approximately 170 feet north of 6th Street from the general GC to the light industrial. The applicant was Netzer Admati and Johnny Greer. This item, upon recommendation of staff, has been to move off calendar for future Planning and Housing Committee meetings. As such, do we have a motion from the commission to move this item off calendar?
I can make a motion to move it off calendar for a later date.
And do we have a second? Commissioner Woody seconds the motion. Please vote. And the motion passes to move off calendar that item. Our next item is CZ 2022-004, a request to change the zone of a .86 acre parcel located on the east side of Promenade Avenue, approximately 170 feet north of 6th Street. Application Z3, general commercial, to a light and manufacturing. Applicant on this item also Netzer Admati and Johnny Greer. At the recommendation of staff, this item has been asked to move off calendar to a future Planning and Housing Committee meeting. As such, do we have a motion from the commission to move off calendar?
I make a motion to move it off calendar.
I'll second again.
All right. Commissioner Woody provided the second. Please vote. And the motion passes to move off calendar. Item number 3 of our public hearing is for CUP 2021-0004, a conditional use permit application to allow a drive-through and walk-up window coffee shop, Starbucks, within an existing commercial center located at the southeast corner of Green River Road and Dominguez Ranch Road, in the neighborhood commercial district of the Sierra del Oro specific plan. Applicant is Jessica Steiner of Bickle Architecture. Mr. Torres, our assistant planner, will present this item. If you'd please proceed, Mr. Torres.
Good evening, Commissioners. Tonight's item is a conditional use permit application to allow a drive-through and walk-up coffee shop for Starbucks. The subject site is a .39 acre parcel that is located within an existing commercial center at the southeast corner of Green River Road and Dominguez Ranch Road. The proposed project is a vacant pad situated on the north portion of the center, adjacent to Green River Road. The commercial center was constructed in the early 1990s, and the subject pad was originally intended for a 4,000 square foot restaurant building. These site plans show the pad existing conditions and shown that it has been indicated it's been rough graded but never built. The NCD zone requires approval of a conditional use permit, which is the purpose for tonight's meeting. The project is surrounded by a drive-through restaurant and a gasoline service station to the west. by inline tenant commercial building to the south, and by office buildings to the east. Green River Road and the railroad right-of-way is located to the north. The commercial center shares driveways along Green River Road and Dominguez Ranch Road. As you can see on screen, there's 3 existing driveways on the Green River Road and 1 on Dominguez Ranch Road. All these four shared driveways are accessible to the project site. The focus site plan shows the proposed building, a new trash enclosure, and the entry to the drive-through lane. The building will be 966 square feet in size. The drive-through entrance is located to the south of the building, which circulates along the east and north sides of the building. As shown on the site plan, the drive-through is capable of stacking 14 vehicles from the drive-through window, which meets the minimum standard for drive-throughs in accordance to the Corona Municipal Code. The new trash enclosure to the west will match the color and the finish of the proposed building for Starbucks, and will include a solid metal roof with mesh metal screening on the openings. The floor plan depicted is a standard Starbucks layout, which includes a back bar, a workroom, and a restroom. This is a more detailed floor plan designed for Starbucks. The back bar is a kitchen area that includes the coffee machines. The workroom area is for employee and manager areas, so shelving racks, freezers, and refrigerators. A walk-up window is located on the south side of the building, while the drive-through window is located on the north side of the building. The proposed coffee shop will only provide drive-through and walk-up services. There will be no outdoor or indoor seating areas for patrons. Starbucks proposes a building designed to maintain the Starbucks look with elements that are compatible with the existing commercial center's architecture. Starbucks will have beige-colored stucco walls and brownish-colored stone veneers on the north and the west elevations. Metal awnings are provided over the drive-through window and the walk-up window to shield the inclement weather. The proposed project proposes directional signs, a Starbucks sign, one Starbucks sign, and their signature logo signs on the building. Landscaping for the project includes shrubs and trees, a mixture of shrubs and trees on the project site. Trees will be placed along the drive-through lane to soften the view of the building. The plan also includes 3-foot-high shrubs along the outer edges of the drive-through lane on the east and on the north of the drive-through to buffer headlight spillover on Green River Road. There's existing shrubs and palm trees located adjacent to the project site on the north and on the east, which will remain in place. The new landscaping is required to be California-friendly. The coffee shop's parking requirement is based on the parking ratios that were in effect at the time the commercial center was entitled. As shown on the parking analysis summary, the parking ratio for restaurants and eating establishments is 1 parking space for every 125 square feet of building size. Starbucks requires 8 parking spaces. The center, including the coffee shop and the office park, and also the adult daycare facility, requires a total of 464 parking spaces. These 3 developments are capable of meeting the required parking spaces as it provides 466 parking spaces on site, which are all shared amongst all tenants. A traffic management plan was provided by the applicant. Per the traffic engineer for the project's anticipated daily trip generation during AM and PM peak hours is not expected to significantly impact the surrounding transportation system. The traffic engineer for the project provided a traffic plan as seen on the screen. The project's drive-through is designated to provide a queuing capacity of 14 vehicles. Should vehicles overflow into the parking lot during the peak hours of the coffee shop, the project's traffic engineer recommends that Starbucks employees place cones on the south end of the drive aisle and direct vehicles to access the drive-through lane from the north end of that drive aisle, as shown on the screen. This would mitigate any potential traffic impacts on the site. To conclude, the project is designed to meet all development standards prescribed by the Cerro del Oro specific plan and meet the development standards for drive-through establishments as prescribed with the Corona Municipal Code. The project has adequate vehicle access from the shared driveways within the commercial center. Potential traffic impacts to the surrounding roadways are expected to be minimal. The site is an infill property with infrastructure already in place to serve the project. Therefore, CUP 2021-0004 recommends for your approval tonight. Thank you.
Mr. Torres, thank you for your presentation. Before we move to public comment, we'll open it up for commissioners with any questions of staff. I also understand we have the traffic engineer available during public comment as well. So we'll start with staff questions.
Yeah, I have a question. I had emailed staff today, and Mr. Eastman and staff worked to get a response to me very timely. I appreciate that. And that was related to the queuing analysis for the line of cars potentially in the drive-through. And so the one thing I just wanted to clarify, that was conducted by a third party, correct? Not by staff?
That's correct.
Okay. And I don't have any further questions at the moment.
Can speak to it. I'm just curious, as far as the layout, why it's a drive-through and a, I guess, walk up. Because from what I see here, they're not going to have any furniture or anything, right? It's just intended to be drive-through and walk up.
Yes, the intention is for drive-through and walk-up services only, so it is expected that a customer would come and either utilize the drive-through lane, or the walk-up service, and not have any there's no availability of seating indoor or outdoor. As you can see on the site plan, it doesn't provide any spacing for any outdoor seating.
Do you have any idea why? I'm just curious as far why this layout is so different from the others. Is it data-driven or?
The applicant did submit an original plan with a small outside dining area, which was located on the west side of the building where the drive-through lane comes out. Staff had some concerns with the location of that, given the vehicle orientation and pedestrians. There was also some concerns in terms of calculating parking, because outside dining does count towards the parking requirement for the center. So at the conversation or discussion with staff, the applicant chose to remove the outside dining.
Thank you. That's it for me right now.
Thank you, Mr. Torres and Mr. Eastman. I had questions also about the layout. It just, when you show the aerial from the package, the staff report, where it shows the center, there you go. So closer to the driveway 1 and between driveway 2 are the 2 pads, 120 being the Copper Locks grill. And the pads are similar in size as far as the dirt lot's concerned, 0.39 acres, right? So there we have a drive-through sit-down restaurant, and it sits on its pad, and it's self-sufficient, and I think they took out 3 parking stalls when Copper Locks went in. And so they're self-sufficient, and they're able to have any overflow into the parking of the general center, right? So then this design comes forward, and I mean, the building for Copper Locks is 2,200 some square feet, and Starbucks is 966 square feet, and yet it's only like a fraction of that whole project site. So, and the building footprint doesn't even sit on the dirt lot. So it's, I was curious about the overflow and the impact to the center itself, because you're removing all the parking that's along the north where the queuing is up to where the dirt pad is currently. And then the second row of parking is being shortened, I think, by 7 pairs, where it normally would go towards Green River. The second half, as you get closer to the Mexican restaurant and the bakery and the bar, the saloon there, so that those are being replaced from, I think, with 5 instead of 6 that are currently there. So those parking spaces make up for some of them. But it seems like there's a lot more parking spaces that are being removed for this design and this layout to accommodate the 14. And then my other question was, 14 cars queued, good, because, you know, Starbucks is a magnet and it definitely attracts. You know, we have a lot of fans in town, obviously, with 13 existing Starbucks. It's good for them. But when you look at the Copper Locks, and I just can't help compare the two, because one, it came before us, right? And now this is so drastic in design in that, I don't know, it's 8 in the queue for Copper Locks. In other words, what I'm trying to say is that Copper Locks Grill is a lot more efficient for its operations, and it's on the pad. And the building footprint for Starbucks isn't even on the dirt pad, so it's stretched out and impacting the parking spaces which are needed for the other, not only the office buildings, which I observed their driveway number 2, they park to where in the design area, project design area is, and they walk over because the office is all parked out. As many as there are spaces over there, they do utilize in front of the retail there. Anyway, those are my thoughts. Any feedback?
Was there a specific question in that? I think those were all really good observations, and I followed along with it pretty well, but
How come the building isn't on the dirt pad?
I would defer that to the applicant who designed the facility.
Sure.
I could guess towards it, but I'm not the designer.
Well, I know, I can guess too. I mean, you needed 14 cars to queue.
That would be my assumption, yes.
Yeah, it
Finish staff
extends,
questions, and then we can move to public comment and have the applicant speak.
Well, I guess questions for staff would be specifically with copper, with the 14 in the queue that meets CMC. And if that is in the same specific plan as this one, how come Copper Locks Grill only had 8 in the queue?
Here's what I can say to that. The demand for Starbucks drive-through is much different than Copper Locks. That's why. They are a fast service, immediate need type of facility versus Copper Locks, which is a full-service sit-down restaurant. So the demand that you are going to see in the morning is going to be greatly different than the demand you would see for a Starbucks. So I do believe the comparison between the two is different in terms of their operations.
I see that. Thank you.
I have a quick question. Has there been any communications with these, with the neighboring businesses about this layout and this proposal to know that it might be impacting their business?
Would defer to the applicant, should they have received any thoughts or insight from the current tenants or
Okay.
owners? Yeah.
Thank you.
And I had another question for staff then.
Ms. Alexander, if I could go, I do have some staff questions. When you look at a complete center and understanding the parking count, some specific questions about the layout here, and the screen is perfect. All of the back parking, so this would be at the bottom left corner of the graphic, is that part of the parking count?
That's all included in the parking count, yes.
Okay. That is gated, and from an entrance standpoint, so does that, when you have gated parking or closed-off parking, how does that apply to the overall parking count?
I did, when I was reviewing the existing precise plan, there was a modification that came back and was approved for that gating, and there were some constraints on that. If I recall correctly, the gating needed to be open during the day, and it could be closed at night for security purposes.
So, but it is part of the count, and it's fairly substantial amount of parking in the back that doesn't get used. So that was question one. And then question two is the commercial property, so the Sierra Del Oro Business Park, the top right half of the screen, is filled with speed bumps to mitigate, I know over the years, to mitigate people from driving through there to bypass Green River Road. So again, is that, from a flow-through standpoint, are those speed bumps to remain? Is there a calculation of their impact in the flow of the center when you start to mitigate and restrain how someone drives through a property?
It has not been indicated to staff about removing any of the speed bumps that are existing on the commercial center.
Okay. And then my last question of staff is, I understand the parking ratio and the impact within the commercial center. Is there a required analysis on a property like this of ingress and egress to the streets, surrounding streets? So for example, location number 4 on the far left corner exits into a single lane roadway, and the only other way to exit on Green River heading west is to move all the way over to entrance number 3. So is that, when you look at a center that's a long flow-through center like this, is there an analysis that's done of how the center will actually operate when you have 200-plus cars going through it in a day?
Yeah, there was a traffic analysis that was prepared for the project, which did identify the turn movements as well as the vehicle counts as part of that traffic analysis, and that was reviewed by our traffic engineer.
So I know we saw the traffic analysis, which shows the number of vehicles, but that also includes exiting onto the city street and its impact?
We saw that
Yes.
for Copper Locks. That was one of the exhibits. I'm not sure if it was L&G who
Yeah.
did it.
So those driveways were evaluated for their volume and circulation.
Okay. And then the last question is, I know the ratio is based upon square footage at it varies by usage type, but if this center were being held to today's parking standards, how many more roughly parking spaces would be provided? Is it substantial, or is it just a minor calculation change?
Based on the square footage of 966, it would require 10 parking spaces?
10, okay, versus the 8 that's,
Yeah, it would be the 1 per 100 on today's.
okay, it would be 1 per 100.
Yeah, let me do clarify that the specific plan for walk-in and takeout, the specific plan actually identifies a retail standard for the restaurant, which would be 1 per 250. If it was actually a restaurant where you went in, sat down, and dined, then it would be the restaurant standard. So that's actually in our specific plan, not the zoning code.
Okay, and that's why you'd made the comment that the seating area was recommended to be removed, because that would change the ratio as well?
Yeah, so that's all factored in there, and parking is tight for the center.
Okay. Thank you. You had,
I did. On that note, Mr. Eastman, so going through the conditions of approval under planning number 15, so I'm confused that if the conditional use permit is only associated with the approval tonight of the walk-up and the drive-through of coffee shop, any future outdoor seating area will require the applicant to submit a CUP modification application to the Planning Division for review. So in my eyes, that leaves it open for outdoor seating versus what we've heard tonight, there will be no outdoor seating.
Yeah, the proposal that's submitted before you today does not include outdoor seating. So if the applicant would like to do that, that would come back as a modification before you. Normally, outdoor seating probably wouldn't come before you because it's not part of the drive-through per se. You know, if you're seating outside, you're not in your car. But given the circumstances that we had some concerns with the drive-through lane visibility, where the vehicles were exiting and where they were proposing the outdoor dining, we would like to evaluate that in more detail.
Thank you, because looking at this one, I mean, if I zoomed in, I think we had an exhibit in our packet where you're taking, there you go, thank you. So over here where the other buildings, the other retail are near the 102 that's cut off at the bottom of your screen. So the diagonal dashes are the pedestrians to cross in front of a busy thoroughway for the center. And then through, again, cutting through the queuing and then over to the building. And then off to the left side, seeing the pedestrian in the new direction of travel for circulation, not only for the cones, but to come back around. I had a concern about those exposing, you're bringing pedestrians and cars together at both those points, and they could be very busy. Okay, I don't have any other questions for staff.
any other? Okay, let's go ahead and move. We'll go ahead and open public comment on this item. And starting with Ms. Capilla, did we receive any speaker cards or written comments from the public?
No, Chair, we did not.
Thank you. So we do have before us the applicant and the traffic engineer. So we'll bring it back to the commission to further comments and questions.
Well, I'm curious, and probably some of you maybe, if the applicant wants to address us.
Good evening. My name is Kate Curtin. I'm with Bickle Group Architecture. I am representing the shell architect for the building and the applicant for this subject project. This is also Chloe.
Hello.
With Bickle Group Architecture. We also have the owner of the development, Rich, here as well to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. Ms. Alexander?
Thanks for coming in, appreciate it. So in the staff report, it was brought up that there were 3 comparisons, the 2 Starbucks here in town that you're familiar with, probably, I don't know. But as far as the designs go, and then one that was suggested in the city of Orange. So I drove to Orange and observed that corner there. And it was probably a good example of what not to do, in my opinion. So it's at the corner of Chapman and Tustin, very busy, both thoroughfares, very, very busy. So you have major exposure on the corner, which is similar to this one, exposure to Green River, which is very busy. Multiple ingress, egress up to the center of which it's within. So there's only 8 in the queue there, so smart for this one to have 14, because we know that it often exceeds that amount. Probably average 11, 16 minutes. Not to say that I was there forever, but I was long enough to watch the flow and the circulation. And the problem that I had with that is that when they were done picking up their order, they came out right into the ingress to the drive-through, and that blocked the parking that was in front of those 5 spaces there, that no one could park there because the line never went away. And then traffic out on the street on Tustin, there's a bus stop there, right? So cars were swerving around the bus to get in to get their Starbucks, right? And so a couple of near misses there. And then other cars completely went around because they wanted to go use the rest of the center, which is similar to the promenade because the flow through to the end. And in the mornings, that would be the donuts, or it would be the gym, or whatever else is open on the west end. Most of it's to the gas station, believe it or not. So in Orange, so it comes through, and it's a very busy thoroughway. So speaking to some of the businesses there, there's a big tire shop, so that's a lot of activity. And there's another restaurant right near it that hasn't opened yet. So it wasn't a true model of how the flow goes around your restaurant. And then on the south side was another restaurant. My point being, there was a lot of activity in that one area. It was like 1 PM. So then the other example was on Metro at Main here in Corona. So again, it's on the corner. It's as soon as you come in the center, you're going to make a right, and get right into line, right? So a couple of clusters there as far as coming through the throughway to the rest of the center. If the line backs up, which the employees say it does, and often in their peak hours, entry into the parking area, I think there's like 15 stalls, and then just to get that line. So that's choke points is created by there. And, you know, the queue seemed to be okay. I looked at your, the numbers for the queuing. And basically between that and our other Green River site, another congestion area, there's another drive-through that opens up right to the thruway, and then Starbucks comes out right to the thruway. My point is that I don't want to create another thruway congestion, which I believe this plan does. So if you look at what's on the screen right here, where that arrow is pointing, the driveway coming up, which is, I think, driveway 2, comes up the hill, up to where your pad's going to be. And then most people turn left, actually, right in front of the, at the bottom there. And then surprisingly, a lot of people turn before you get there. So right in front of the parking spaces that are currently there, where the dirt pad is. And whether that's to cut through the parking lot to go further to other retail or not, but it's a heavily used area in my opinion. And I sat and I watched it, so I know. And then as far as the cones go, and I'll talk to our traffic engineering, I'm not sure about that, to be honest with you. I totally respect Rosie, you and Aaron, and what you do. But sitting out there and watching the flow on site, that's why I go on site, is because sometimes paper isn't a true reflection. I'm not sure it would, in theory it would work, but to me it just avoids the flow. Along with the traffic that comes out over here where it says adjacent zone shopping, and it's cut off a little bit off to the right on your screen there, those folks come out. And they don't all park in those parking lots. They come and park right here where that little curve is for the queuing. And today I was out there, this morning I was out there, and just the short time that I was there, 4 or 5 of them parked and walked over. And they didn't leave as if they went and got something and left. They were there for the whole time. So I know there's overflow from the folks east there. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, as far as relying on the LLG, I got a chuckle out of it. I mean, they went out there for 7 hours, and they came up with a frequency and a queuing. To me, all of it shows is that Corona does a much better job of planning our Starbucks than the city of Orange does, because they had 86-90% of their queuing was over into the traffic, whereas ours were very low compared to that. My question for you is, for this design of this 966 square foot building, to me, it seems like it's a square peg going into a round, hole. And the reason is because the pad back in the 90s was approved for a sit-down restaurant. The other pad had a drive-through and sit-down, right? So the parking ratio that was explained and why they're complying with it is because it fit that model. A drive-through sit-down and then another sit-down, not 2 drive-throughs. And the extensiveness of this circular, I just don't know that it's a good fit because it interferes with the flow in the parking lot. That major corridor there where your queuing starts, that's needed right now as it exists as far as the flowing, whether at night or not necessarily in the morning because the businesses are closed. So I have concerns about that. Thank you.
I have a question along those lines, and this is a good graphic. Was there design consideration to basically invert the layout such that the Starbucks building itself was at the bottom right end and the queue was actually at the top? Therefore, instead of the queue being right near the primary entrance and flow within the center and putting it at the top. So I'm curious if that was analyzed and what that did from a queuing perspective.
Sure, and let me first address, thank you for your comments as well. We do have, I believe, our traffic engineer, has he joined the Zoom? Yes. So if there are specific traffic and queuing related to that analysis, then I'll let him speak to that. Just in general, I know you previously made the comment regarding where the site, the building was located, why is it on the pad? It really is in relation to getting those 14 cars queued. The other important impact for Starbucks is getting that 7th car for the order point, so that you have at least 7 cars, that can be queuing past that order point. It has been shifted to where it is now, especially because of the low infiltration rate on the site. You'll notice on the civil plans there is a large biofiltration area within that landscape area. So that is partly the reasoning for the shift over, in addition to the queuing onto the site.
Where is that? Can you point that more specifically?
You'll
Is it that
see
big white area?
that white area, that whole entire rectangle, that is for water filtration for the site. Because the infiltration rate was so low, wasn't percolating. So that is the civil engineer system on site. So that's also why you'll see that, no trees can be planted in that area. It has specific requirements as far as drainage.
So what is that, so looking at this, what you're pointing out right now, is that a concrete pad? Is that a wall around the equipment? How does that work?
Do you want to say something?
Oh, if you see, they have a call out, it's actually cedar on top of it.
So typically it looks like landscape, but what it's doing is it's taking all of the water on site and it's filtering into a subterranean biofiltration system that then percolates back into or goes back into the storm drain system.
I'm sorry, is that on this map? And if so, could you give me a little more specific? I'm not picking it up on that map.
So if you see those 3 trees and those 2 kind of on the south, head to the east, and that white area where there's no landscaping, a large rectangular area between the parking, yes, it's that area.
So that's an underground water filter?
Yes.
Okay.
I just wanted to, because it looks a little weird on the site. Chloe can also address some of the previous designs that we entertained onto the site, and I know one of your questions was regarding that.
Yeah, so we did go through a bunch of analysis where the building was sitting. We did do where the building would be lower, and that was just because of the retail center below. It was just, if the exit's right there, you're causing more people exiting and more cars in that point. So this was the best layout to get the most carring and the most queuing.
Thank you. That gives me some clarification as far as the queuing goes. I still had a question with the number of parking spaces, because if you look at this diagram, see all the way over to the pedestrian walkway on the left there, and as they cross to come over, right at Green River there, those existing parking spots now go all the way to the dirt pad. And your building, your footprint is not even on the dirt pad. So all of that was parking up until probably not quite your tree, but where the start of your landscaping behind the building is, to the right of the building end there. I don't see that those parking spaces have been recovered or counted. And then see where it says limit of work, where it says, see the building, and then right south of it or just under it, there's a little annotation there, and there's a little strip of green and some landscaping there. That whole double parking going down, there used to be a lot more parking spaces there. And you make up some of them on the side here under the 2 big trees and then off to the facing. But what's facing has parking and then another set of single parking. I just don't think that you recovered all the numbers correctly. And I think those parking are needed now. If you go out there now, it may not be in the morning, but in the evening when your store will be open, those parking spaces are not only used in the afternoon from the office buildings, some of them, but, to the, credit to the center. These are very well flourishing businesses, and they're all there and needing all those spaces. I think it went over about 5 p.m. on a Friday night. There were only like 12 or 15 spaces all along where your circular driveway is right now. So, and that Copper Locks isn't even open yet. And when we approved that, we had them coming in along that drive. In fact, 3 of the spaces are employee parking, so that those cars are there during their shifts, so they don't have to have the customers be in and out, because they'll be blocked from. So anyway, so those are my points.
Does staff have an idea of a net change in parking from current? I know, because I saw the parking analysis had a final total of 3 extra spots, more than what was required, but versus what's currently there, because as Commissioner Alexander pointed out, We do lose spots along Green River where the Starbucks building is going. And from my count, it looked like we lost 9 there, and then we've added 8 back on the, under the trees. But then maybe we're losing spots for the trash enclosure as well. Do we know the net change?
This project will result in the loss of 10 spaces, but they are replacing 8 of those spaces that are being lost, so there is a net loss of 2 spaces.
Question on the walk-up process. I don't see where there's any special parking spaces or anything delineated or a crosswalk that shows. So if I'm a walk-up customer or I ordered on the app and I'm picking up on the app, which is what I do, where do I park? How am I safely protected there?
Sure. Starbucks, the tenant applicant, also has submitted to the city already. They typically do designate at least 2 mobile order stalls. So typically you park in those stalls and walk up, or park in any of the other stalls. They did mention that walk-up window is mostly used by somebody who's already done the mobile order and is walking up versus somebody who's happening upon the Starbucks. But
Well, and so that kind of ties into, we were shared a graphic which is a little bit different, which actually shows, it's Exhibit 12, which has the orange cones and the directional arrow. Could we pull that one up? So that was helpful to see that, because in my copy, I didn't see the red arrows. So now seeing this, and it looks like 15% of the time, if I'm correct, according to the study, that there's a chance that there's going to be more than 14 cars. Is that correct?
can we defer to Kyle on Zoom to explain?
Good evening. This is Kyle Mayberry. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, hello.
Hi, hello. I'm a principal with Linscott Law and Greenspan Engineers, and I worked on the site several times. And yeah, so we did the queuing studies, and I don't know if you see the report, but there's an 85th in Table 3 and Table 4. Table 3 of the study is a weekday summary, and then Table 4 is a weekend summary. And we show the 85th percentile queue, which suggests that 15% of the time it would exceed that queue, and then the 95th percentile queue, which indicates 5% of the time it would exceed the queue. And then there's a maximum number. The two Corona sites, and the commissioner indicated, yes, actually do not have nearly the kind of the queuing issues or data. The one in Orange, which the other two obviously have indoor dining as well, so they're not necessarily entirely apples to apples. But yes, for that site, the weekday, the 95th percentile was 15. So for a small percentage of the AM, it's really 2 hours in the morning, that there's a chance that there would be a queue of 15, and then the max was 18. And then the weekend, the 95th was 18, and the max was 18. So the Orange site is obviously a lot more urban. The volume of traffic throughout the day is a little more significant. I know Green River is obviously busy in the morning and the afternoon, but it's really just a morning condition, quite frankly, and the center is pretty quiet in the morning. So as it relates to the queue, we do a lot of work for Chick-fil-A, so the traffic management plans are very important. And as you probably remember, during COVID, they did a really good job of creating area within shopping centers. And this plan, we believe, is good. And at the end of the day, what we don't want is the queue ever to reach out in the Green River, because that's when it becomes an issue. And there's little to no chance that would happen. The queue would have to be probably in the 30 or 40 to get that far with the plan. So we believe that when the queue would get to, to 14 or 13 or 14, there's usually someone out there with an iPad anyway, potentially, but they would basically put that management plan into effect, which are pretty effective. And in that case, the queue storage almost doubles and stays kind of within its own site. So we believe it's a good layout. And as it relates to moving the building around, obviously I'm not an architect, but because you need the car to show up at the window on the left side of the car, it has to be a counterclockwise flow. It's difficult to put it anywhere else but in that spot. I think that's the kind of the dilemma. It's convenient for the new diner because the way it's in that corner, but unfortunately you get a situation where it's on this side of the site where it's a little more challenging to get the building at the bottom there and still create that flow pattern.
Hi, Kyle. This is Karen Alexander. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Thank you for that explanation. I just have to make comments that confirming you guys had folks counting the queue for a total of 7 hours on one day and 2 days later, 4 hours on that Saturday. So a Thursday and a Saturday were the only 2 days that
Correct.
queues were counted. Okay, 365 days out of the year, 11 hours. I don't know that. I just don't have a lot of faith in those 85 percentile numbers when it's such a small data set. It's such a small subset. And when you're putting analysis together, yes, it gives you a general idea, but I'm not sure it's a true representation. And I would hate to have this turn into a negative for this center because they're successful. And it's on the West End. I'm down there. I like having this center. I don't want a negative into this center. And I like the dynamics of the folks that they have now. And it just seems to me that if you have 11 hours out of all the hours in a year, it's just too short of a data set. I mean, you're 0.1%, basically.
Yeah, so I would obviously it's labor intensive and costs, so, and I coordinate with the city on the time and the locations and the times. And I will say that we've done many of these studies for Starbucks throughout Orange County and other locations. And this 14 is basically their standard. So we're confident that that's the appropriate number. And keep in mind that, while this is a small, we could have captured a busy day and not a slow day. So it goes both ways. We capture obviously the busy times, 6 to 9, 11 to 1, and 4 to 6. That's the times when they're busy. We know from doing this for many studies. And I would say that the overflow plan does create a significant buffer to any interruption with the center. And I know that, not to get off target a little bit as it relates to parking, and I think this is relevant, that portion of the center is really underparked. So we did a shared parking study, a survey shared parking study. I know that it wasn't allowed to be done per the code because of the size of the acreage, but we did counts in October and there was one vacancy and the center was never more than 50% occupied. So there is a significant availability of parking in that little corner. So in our experience and opinion, any type of queuing in that area of the parking doesn't impact the rest of the center. And keep in mind, it's really just a morning condition when the center is pretty much quiet.
I appreciate your information you're providing at the Metro Starbucks. When I spoke to the staff, the manager, and asked about your timing, and their response was 11 to 1, they aren't busy. They're busy in the morning, but their peak time in the afternoon only starts at 1 o'clock. So basically, I think it's too small of a sample to come to those conclusions, but we'll just have to agree to disagree.
Oh, I have a few comments.
I mean, it's site specific too, so.
Yeah, I have comments just not necessarily specifically to the traffic engineer, but you know, the queuing analysis, my feeling on it is that the two Corona locations are more or less irrelevant because given the layout of this, the fact that the only option to get your drink is walk up or drive through. So I think that the Orange location is the only data that's relevant for our consideration, and I don't think it's good when we see the numbers on, you know, the Thursday time, you know, 80 at the 85th percentile. So we're saying 15% of the time we're going to be totally full. That line's going to be totally full, and I would possibly expect to see it higher. I mean, all the traffic that flows through Corona to get on the freeway at Green River, you know, this shopping center has long been a stop-off point for that traffic. I mean, it's been to the boon to the business for the gas station that opened there, you know, 5 or 6 years ago. So I wouldn't have a lot of confidence that the Starbucks on the other side of the freeway is going to remain open after this one's here, because it would be so inconvenient for people trying to get coffee on their way into Orange County or LA just to get on the 91. So, and then on the weekend, the Saturday numbers, the average, which would be 50% of the time, the average is 13. So that, I mean, almost at capacity of that 14 car queue, and then 85th% is 17, where you have 3 cars overflowing the queue. So realistically, in between, there's going to be times where you have 15 cars, 16 cars, and, you know, the 14 cars are not necessarily all going to be nicely compact there. One car moves up, the other cars lag behind. So, you know, that if we're at 14 cars or even 13, that last 1 or 2 cars could be sticking out into the drive lane in the shopping center. So I have concerns that the queuing isn't long enough for this type of location. I feel that, you know, you've got those very successful businesses, you know, the Mais Cocina and the Happy Hour Saloon have done very well, and this is going to be going on right in front of them. So I feel like that it might be a potential major disturbance to their business. Mais opens on the weekends at 10 o'clock, I believe, to do brunch, which would be, you know, in the middle of these peak times. So, you know, I would like to see adjustments to the layout. I understand the idea of having the building where it is, and because of the need for the cars to go counterclockwise. But I feel like that drive lane there, you know, wherein most cars would enter the queue, probably needs to just be turned into parking and then extend the queue into where those that next row of parking is. So that's kind of where I'm at. You know, I think there's some other. I'm sure Corona residents will be very happy to have this Starbucks if we can get it. You know, the details ironed out. I mean, I know. With 13 Starbucks and counting, then they obviously love their Starbucks. But I'm concerned about, you know, the effects on the other businesses, and you know, and I will take exception to what our traffic person just said, that this area, this part of the shopping center is under parked. I mean, I think it's underparked, meaning there's not enough spots for what's needed. But maybe he was there at a time when the businesses, the offices were not in session. But I think with the addition of the new restaurant that's very close to opening and with the other things, I'm very worried about the effects this will have.
Question, you reviewed other site plans. We all appear to have some concerns and issues with the flow. I'm going to call it the cone zone where A and B are shown there, and the general flow. Are there other options that the applicant can explore to alleviate and solve those concerns?
We certainly initially explored a lot of options. As the traffic engineer noted, that it's a difficult site to kind of make all the pieces work, especially there's, a large slope along Green River Road. We have certain setbacks we need to adhere to, driveway widths, things of that nature. To the comment of extending the drive-through queuing, we really don't want to impact the rest of the site and close off that additional lane. So we feel that this option allows for 14 cars, which in Starbucks' opinion is, significant amount, especially for this site, without having to close off that area and potentially take away additional parking stalls and navigate the circulation on the site. Chloe, do you want to go any further into the early?
I mean, I guess my concern is this graphic's pretty telling. It's only showing the inbound line in queue, but you also have the exiting cars from the drive-through and the exiting cars from the walk-up, as well as any walk-up cars that are coming in. So if you really looked at the inbound flow and then the outbound flow in a very narrow center, it's concerning that maybe this is the only option.
And what we tried to do is, and as you can see, as you come off of Green River Road and then into the site, you kind of have a long journey before you get into the queuing area. If you're following, obviously, those red arrows on the high impact times, that would be an even further, destination that you're going. Versus something that would be quickly into the site that would impact Green River Road. So that was a concern of ours, that we tried to make sure that we had, a long enough distance that we could get onto the site, what would happen when cars back up, what's our backup plan, and then as far as exiting, you also have a longer journey as you exit from that drive-through lane. You're not immediately going into, I know we've all been in Starbucks where there's an immediate exit, perhaps out onto Green River Road that, cars are waiting and backing up, and then you already have your coffee, but you can't go because somebody's trying to turn right. So at least on this site, we don't have that problem. We have a nice, we're far enough back into the site where you can at least come out into the rest of the shopping center. And you have a lot of, exit points that are advantageous on this site versus other sites.
I had a question for you. Have you also thought about staying on the dirt pad and just do a walk-up?
I don't...
And sit down inside?
I don't believe parking would work out, especially just because with the 966 building, as small as it is right now, and you heard, parking is so tight. And in addition, just removing the drive-through portion of Starbucks, as we know, it's a major component. I personally don't think it would be a viable option for.
So that's where I come back to my thoughts on when this was designed in 90s. That's why we're using 90s parking ratios, right? Because it was entitled back then. It was entitled for a sit-down restaurant and one drive-through, the pad 120, where Copper Locks was approved for it, that we approved. And I like the idea of they had planned it out to where each corner of those pads that overlook Green River could be conducive. It would be a cohesive center, and the traffic flow, and that's why the parking is set up that way. Again, I just think we're trying really hard to make a square peg fit into a round hole, so, sorry.
If I could share, in the past, we've had at least a dozen drive-through of various brands come before the commission. And Kyle, you mentioned Chick-fil-A. We also had Raising Cane's, where we had concerns about traffic flow. And those applicants were able to evaluate the site and potentially come up with solutions to the concerns. Is that something that the applicant feels that they could entertain, other options, or is this really the only option before us?
We could certainly look into it. I know that coming up to this point, I mean, Rich, you could probably speak to the history of the project and maybe the different iterations that we've already tried. And perhaps maybe that would be something that we could provide to you, that, you know, the different iterations that have already gone through. But yes, I understand your concern.
Yeah, I am Rich Gabley with Green River, and we've been working on this for over a year and a half, and the design was to try to, you know, it's not a perfect site, and a reason, you know, I know that the retail ownership had no other tenants that were viable for a long period of time. This is Starbucks is a great tenant for the area, and I know that Milton, who's building the new restaurant, he's very excited about the exposure and the amount of people that are going to see his center. No site is perfect by all means. This is a funky look, but there was some drainage issues that were missed when they built the center. It wasn't to today's world that we're having to deal with, plus the traffic. I think the exit, you have two exits coming out of the drive-through. Starbucks, I want to say 70% of their business is drive-through, even with a cafe. This is, they do their own analysis. This was never a sit-down cafe for them. So I don't think a cafe will work here for them. And we tried to address, as best we can with the limitations of the site. I know that, been very diligent in trying to do it and working with staff. And, a lot of smart people have tried to come up with to make this as functional as possible with with wanting to be a good neighbor, wanting to provide a service. Starbucks is, they put a lot of input into their businesses being successful. So we've all collectively, I know you guys are looking at it quickly and you have to, kind of make points, but, we've been doing this for over a year and have, lots and lots of broken pencils, going back and forth. So I think it's a very good plan. It brings a really good user. It's going to provide for the neighborhood. I think it's going to increase traffic to the center and help all the surrounding businesses. And, just with Starbucks on the other side of the freeway, a freeway is a barrier. No one wants to get, if you're late for work, you're not going across the freeway to the Starbucks. I don't see a lot of Starbucks closing with the drive-through, so I don't think that would happen. We have a one going on in Bakersfield, and it's on the opposite side of the freeway. So it's just people like their coffee and they want it fast. The walk-up window is, it's mostly all pre-orders that you're coming in and out. So I think it's going to be a very efficient layout for what we're doing. I mean, we added a couple more parking spaces up by the restaurants. We understand we're, trying to be as thoughtful as possible. So just a lot of time and effort by your staff, by our people have gone into this. We think it's a very good use, and we would like your help. We're, more than willing, and Starbucks has always been, supportive of trying to work things out if there's, how do you mitigate issues once it happens? So thank you for your time.
Question for you. Have you communicated with the neighbors there with the flow and access? Because I do see the cones, so that might interfere. Have you talked to the neighbors, the businesses there, as far as flow?
We've talked to Milton quite a bit because he's been out there and he's been very helpful, and just, bounced ideas off of him. We've been to the restaurants, just being out there. I know that the shopping center ownership has talked to all the tenants and let them know and kind of shared and had a dialogue with them.
So they know about the cones? Because I think that throws me off too, where I know it's Plan B, and
Yeah, and I
I've
think-
seen the cones, that's not ideal.
Yeah, and I think that, that's to try to prevent it from if peak hours, that cone allows it to stack internally versus pushing out and causing any kind of issue on Green River. Again, not perfect by any means, but, this is considering the challenges with the soil, with the drainage, with just design, trying to limit parking losses. I mean, I think to get to only losing 2, I think they did a fabulous job on the design. Starbucks being cooperative when we said, hey, we can't do patio. They said, we don't, no one hangs out there. We're good for this. So I think we've all tried to work together and try to, there's been a very deep dive into trying to make this site that's very, very difficult work. And I think we've come up with a design.
Well, I appreciate the information. I appreciate you guys coming out. And no disrespect to Milton. He's a great guy. We can't wait for him to open. But he's only been in the center for a little bit. And I think communication with the existing businesses for you as an applicant would have gone miles. You would have been able to hear, I'm a customer to all these folks down there. This is my only part of town where I can go quickly, right? So I'm protective of it. And it's not a matter of not supporting Starbucks. I mean, we love that you guys invest in our city. I mean, that's amazing. And you definitely have a customer base here. That's not it. But to be honest with you, when I'm looking at this and having my hesitations and my concerns, it's more of finding the right fit, right, in the center. And I think of the commercial pad that's going to be built across the street, Green River, before it goes eastbound to the 91. And I kind of think that would be a good location for you. I just think there's too many conflicts of the traffic flow here with the existing patterns that we're aware of if we're up there, and we've been there for years. I just don't know that a drive-through up both ends of the center is, and maybe they saw that back in '90 when they originally only put the one drive-through in. I don't know.
Yeah, my comment and concern is that the word of challenging, it's not perfect. If we know that there's issues now, the reality is that we'll have issues in the future. I was contacted by several residents of a Starbucks that was approved in Corona, and the queuing situation spills over into city streets. And they were more concerned with impact, less concerned about it being Starbucks. People like their coffee, and this is not an anti-coffee or anti-Starbucks issue. It's just the concern I have is that there's a traffic flow issue, and it's in a difficult corner. And when you look at the lines, and I think about trying to navigate this, and coffee people like to get it fast and go. And I actually go to the Starbucks on the other side of the freeway, and I would shift to this. And I think you're going to see a huge impact here, and I think there's going to be many times that there's a lot of queuing issues in the center. The fact that it's almost as busy on the weekends as well is, I think, pretty telling. If there's not another alternative to review and address this, I have concerns with the application.
Yeah, I'm uncomfortable with the cone situation. because, it's really relying on, the restaurant and or the coffee shop and their employees to do it. And I don't think, I think of Chick-fil-A because they had that universally at pretty much every one of their restaurants needing to be aggressive and even so, my wife made the mistake of going in a Chick-fil-A drive-through the other day, and it took her over 30 minutes, even though this was an off-peak time. And so obviously with this layout, we don't have to worry about cars spilling into the street, but I'm curious from Commissioner Alexander, were you seeing cars spilling into the street in Orange?
They backed up to, if I can remember what it looked, right where the bus is. There were almost 2 crashes because they went around the bus to try and get in, and then when they came around the bus, they didn't realize the other car had extended out beyond the queue, and so, that was one of them. And then I saw one other one where the car was exiting and the flow of traffic. So Tustin is just really busy street, not like Green River. I mean, Green River flows, but this is multiple lanes.
It's a very busy intersection there. But did you see Starbucks employees managing the situation at the time you were there?
I actually, from outside, I didn't want them to think that I'm stalking them, so I kind of went up and walked up and ordered something. And so I asked the employee, I said, obviously you're very successful here, what's the deal with no sit down? And he said, we're so busy in here, we have no idea what's going on outside. I said, well, how many cars are in the queue? He goes, I have no idea. I said, do you know that they're backed up by the bus stop? He goes, that happens all the time. So they're used to complaints, and that other store hadn't even opened yet. The Mexican restaurant guy said, we have no parking because Starbucks, American Tire, we were great until Starbucks. I mean, it's just the parking situation. So probably it shouldn't have been approved in that one spot in Orange.
I would say, so returning to the applicant, I think you've said this is the best arrangement that you feel that you have available to be able to meet the demands of this facility. Is that, I think you said that, but I just wanted to.
Yeah, I mean.
There's really no other options here than what's presented.
I mean, like I said before, I think maybe something that we could do is perhaps show you maybe the alternatives that we went through. Perhaps that would help to paint the history of how, we developed into this design. And like Rich said, we're open to suggestions if there are, something that you can see that would help alleviate the concerns.
And then I'm not familiar with the Tustin one with the order board and where that was located, because I know that going to 7, in the operations was a very important aspect for Starbucks, and I think that's maybe a newer step in their operation process to try to move things faster through. So I don't know that off the top of my head, but I know that the 7-car stacking was important.
I don't know. It didn't seem like they had a lot on the menu when I stood there. I mean, if you're a Starbucks fan, you order it. My husband's a huge fan, so he orders his caramel, whatever. So, I mean, he's in and he's out quickly because he doesn't try anything different. That's what he does. I have a feeling maybe the others are similar. They like what they like.
Yeah, I'm the same. I'm there and grab my coffee and go, so.
Well, I would say I remember the last Starbucks drive-through, I believe on North Main, also had the order board at car number 7. And although that was not a similar setup with walk-up and drive-through only, that one also had the cafe. So, I mean, the constructive options I can offer here, again, would be to close off that first pathway, extend the parking, where the 5 spots are over to the next one. I would say take the trash enclosure out of the parking lot and put it back in the corner behind the Starbucks. And then I would also want to see other traffic studies from similar Starbucks models, but with this layout with 14 cars, which I think will spill over and impede other operators in the shopping center, I'm very uncomfortable with it as is.
I think that's the consensus. So we're at a point to, this item could be, the commission could deny the application if that's, so the motion would
what I
go,
would
or we have options for the applicant to go back and evaluate the concerns that the commission has surfaced and determine if there's other options before us. And we've done that multiple times, and generally it has been beneficial to both the applicant and to the concerns of the commission.
Yeah, I would recommend, based on the information we have tonight, and have us go back and regroup, I would recommend a continuance to March 20th and allow us some opportunity to sit down with them and to hopefully Starbucks operations team and get more of an idea on how this type of facility operates as well. We've heard from their team in the past on other centers on how they move in certain layouts, so let us do that. But I would recommend March 20th. It's not the next meeting, it's the following one. It gives us a little bit more time, and if we're not prepared, we can make another continuance.
I'm wondering, Ms. Coletta, would it be unreasonable to just push it to 2 months to make sure there's time for the diligence to be done?
In the essence of timing, like they said, they've been with us for a year. I would prefer to give us that date, and if they need more time, then we can extend it out rather than them sitting, having to wait out a longer time if they're ready to go.
Yeah. All right, so then I think that is general consensus is that we would continue this item until the March 20th meeting, at which time the applicant can come back and share with us some of the other site studies that were done and address some of the concerns that were raised by the commission here tonight.
Thank you.
Do you need a motion, Chair?
Yeah, so with that, do we have a motion for continuance to March 20th of this item?
I'll go ahead and make a motion to continue to March 20th.
And I'll second.
And Commissioner Woody, second. And if you'd vote on that. Continue, yes. Came through.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. That item has been passed to continue to March 20th. Moving to written communications, has the Housing and Planning and Housing Commission Secretary received any written communications from persons wishing to seek action by the Planning and Housing Commission?
No, Chair, we have not.
Thank you. Ms. Coletta, any administrative reports for us this evening?
Nothing specific, just to keep you updated on the housing element. I know how much you love this topic. We are going March 1st to the City Council. We have it advertised and the agenda is going out. But Adam and myself, we did listen to some of the comments on the design standards that you talked about last time. So we went back through the document and made it more enforcing with the shall be. So we did make some of those corrections. And we also increased the setback criteria in case there's any properties next to single family. If you go more than 2 stories, it needs to be 25 feet. So there was that discussion on that from the original 15. So we did make some of those revisions, and we're going to continue to move forward with that. So just wanted to let you know the update.
Thank you. And for the commissioners, any items that you wish to discuss this evening? All right, thank you. The meeting is adjourned. We'll return on March 6th. Thank you.